McLaren is a company that's famous for a few things. Their Formula One success, building one of the most iconic supercars ever, the F1, and being run by Ron Dennis, possibly the most joyless man in motorsport. Lately though, they've gained some notoriety for being the latest newcomers to the Supercar Makers Club, where they compete quite well with the likes of Ferrari and Porsche. And now they've produced this, the 570S. It's an important car for the company because it's the first in their supersports line of models, which they say is aimed at the lower end of the sports car market. And by lower end, I mean that they're not inconceivably expensive and unattainable, just massively expensive and slightly less unattainable. McLaren's first modern supercar, the MP412C, was an attention-grabbing, unique-looking thing. When they followed it up with the 650, they came in for a bit of flack for making it look too similar to the MP412C. And similarly, the 570S looks similar to the 650. It's not an unattractive car, and it still gets lots of attention. And besides, I do think this habit of making all the models look the same is a bit of a British sports car maker thing. Aston Martin have been doing it for ages, and so have Morgan. Be that as it may, the 570S features a lot of typical McLaren cues, the most obvious being how the headlight area and taillight design have a very McLaren logo-type shape to them. The carbon fiber details add to its low, wide stance to give it genuine supercar appeal. The most dramatic bit, though, is the P1-inspired rear end, with its minimal brake lights and gaping apertures revealing just a few hints of engine. An engine which you won't actually see unless you happen to be a McLaren mechanic or standing next to one when he unbolts the cover. The car generates excitement wherever you go. On our road trip from the middle of Sandton to some remote parts of Mpumalanga, people commented and pointed and took photos almost non-stop. Of course, if McLaren had their way, that wouldn't happen because they want this car to be as common a sight as a Porsche, and they're aiming it squarely at the 911. They say out of all their cars, this is the more practical, more comfortable option, a sports car you can use every day. And the initial impression is that it certainly feels like it could be. It's quite easy around town, with light steering and a ride setup that's just on the comfortable side of firm. Then there's the interior, which has, it has to be said, a phenomenally good infotainment interface. The tablet-style touchscreen responds easily and works intuitively. The seats, thin and light though they may be, still offer decent levels of comfort even over longer distances, and the spec level has almost everything covered. So, while there is evidence to suggest that this is the everyday McLaren, you only have to read a little bit about it or look at the details to realize that it's still about performance. McLaren have done everything possible to save weight in this car, from giving it a carbon fiber tub to fitting it with these scalloped, hollowed-out stalks. And the result is the 570S weighs just 1,300 kilograms. When you combine that with a 419 kilowatt, 600 newton meter, 3.8 litre V8, you end up with something that is pretty special. The initial power delivery from the twin-turbo motor has a little bit of lag, but despite that, the 0 to 100 time takes just 3.2 seconds. Top speed is 328 kilometers an hour. The 7-speed dual-clutch gearbox may at times feel clunky around town, but when you're in the throes of a mountain pass, it clicks from one gear to the next with impressive speed and responses. One of the best things about this car is the power band, which feels really big. Keep it anywhere above 3,500, 4,000 RPM and you're rewarded with real power and speed every time you put your foot down. It may not be the best sounding thing in the world, but it sure as hell delivers. And it does so with absolute ease, so much so that quite often a glance at the speedometer will have you realizing you're doing a speed far higher than you thought and that you probably shouldn't be doing. While the power is always intoxicating, the handling is less so. The 570S deals with longer open corners almost with disdain. And don't get me wrong, there is tons of grip and it really feels stuck to the road, but if you want to have fun and really feel what this chassis can do, you need to find faster, tighter corners, where this car gets to show off its phenomenal turn-in and front-end grip, and when you can really lean on the carbon ceramic brakes. Those brakes really do lack feel most of the time, but start to make them work and they become more rewarding, and also pack superb stopping power. On more challenging roads, even ones that aren't as smooth as would be ideal, the 570S really does come alive. delivering precise steering and excellent feedback from the chassis. And in those conditions, it is a very enjoyable car. But it is a little, well, I don't want to say soulless because it's not, but it just doesn't have the fury of, say, a Lamborghini Huracan, even though it does have a similar price. So yes, the McLaren 570S is a car you can use every day, and it is a brilliant performer. But for a supercar, it really could do with a bit more drama. With an incredible power-to-weight ratio of almost 320 kilowatts per ton, the McLaren 570S is undeniably quick, and it has the chassis and braking to match. It is a very competent supercar, and it can be entertaining under the right circumstances. It's also very comfortable and ergonomically sorted, but the brakes lack feel unless they're really being used, and it can feel fairly clinical.